Good morning, this is Suzanne from Ohio. I have a little project share for you today, and it's all about these fabric snippets. Now, I know everybody's making them and there's lots of variations for them, but I think I discovered something new, and you might want to watch just for a few helpful hints. Okay, so the whole concept is to just string along these pieces of fabric on and sew them onto anything. It can be a strip of muslin, it can be a strip of lace, it can be even a strip of paper if that's what you want to do. And then you can snip them apart wherever you want them and add them to your journal. They can be page edges, they can be belly bands, or they can be even tabs. You can take a little snippet of it and fold it over and either sew it onto the edge of your page or glue it on. Now, mine are sewn on this strip, and you can see here was a strip of lace. Mine are sewn onto this strip of lace just with a running stitch because I was watching TV. So that's what I did. But today we're going to do some on the sewing machine with a few extra ideas that I had. So let me tell you how I started out. See if I can find one here. Okay, bear with me, I got it. Alright, so the first ones I did was I just running stitched it onto a piece of muslin. And I kind of wibble-wobbled my running stitch. That way it just adds some focal interest right here on the front. Now, if you were going to really use these on the edge of your journal, you could embellish right on top of them. You could put a little flower, a piece of lace, or a little piece of ephemera, tiny little scraps of collage or whatever you need to do. Now, I'm constantly turning around to make sure I'm still in frame and my hands are out of the way, so bear with me. So that was my first try. The ones with muslin, I thought, now, gosh, when I go to snip these apart, this running stitch is possibly going to come loose. So I thought, well, okay, then I started back stitching every so often. And that still didn't make me real happy. I thought, well, my only option is to put it on the sewing machine, because I know if I snip those apart, it won't, the little pieces won't come loose. And then I had another bright idea. Alright, so we all know what seam binding is, and so I went and looked in my stash to see if I had any seam binding that was iron-on. Now, when I go to the fabric store, I usually pass that up because most of my seam binding I stain with distress inks or paint or whatever I've got and scrunch them up. And if it doesn't have the iron-on strips on it, it works real well. But I never could think of a use for the ones with the iron-on strips, so I passed up a whole lot of them. But lo and behold, here I had some, and you can see the little strips of adhesive that go right along both sides. So it's iron-on seam binding, and I think it's basically nylon or polyester. But I thought, man, that would work good. So what I started doing was stitching my little snippets onto the iron-on seam binding, and then take it to the ironing board and iron, and that way all the little pieces have that a little bit of adhesive on them, so when I snip it off, they'll stay together. And so I'm just going to be brave here and show you. I'm going to snip one apart. There we go. I've already ironed that one, so look, pretty secure. It's not going anywhere. And so that makes a beautiful little addition to a journal page. So let me show you that. So here's just a piece of cardstock with a little drawing on it. So if this were my page in my journal, I could adhere that along the edge, or I could take a small snippet of it and fold it over and stitch it on, and that makes my tab. All right, so you had the general idea. So one thing led to another. First it was the muslin, and then I thought, well, I'll back it on some lace, which I did before I even thought of the seam binding thing. I don't have one of those right here right this second, so I can't show you that. But if anybody's not familiar with iron-on seam binding, comes in a packet like this, and it'll say iron-on. If it doesn't say iron-on, then that means it does not have the adhesive strips on the back. And you can see these are very old, and I get them at my thrift store for 25 cents each. So a couple different colors I'll be working on today. And so I decided to use this idea. So what we're going to do is I'm going to run through this process with you and give you an alternative in case you can't find any iron-on seam binding. I can't walk and chew gum, so I'm hesitating here. So another thing I had was I have this huge bag of cotton pearl. Now this was donated to me and my sister, and I'm sure she found it at the thrift store. And that's more cotton pearl than I'll ever use. So I thought, how can I use that? And I love little sticky outies on my pages. So we're going to cut some of this up and incorporate it in with these snippets and see how it turns out. So we're just going to do a short one. And what we're going to do is start. I'm just going to put that down to hold that in place. When you start, make sure your adhesive strip is facing up, because when you lay your fabric snippets down on top of it and then you go to iron it, you want to make sure. Okay, look what I did. I'm glad I looked. You can't hardly tell, so there it is, face up. All right, now the only time consuming part about this is getting your fabric snippets ready. And so I did have to sit for a little while and go through my scraps, and then I just cut everything into approximately 1 inch by 1 inch or 3/4 by 1 or just anything. And I use my pinking shears because I love those edges, and I know over time they'll fray a little tiny bit, and I just love that. So we're going to use some of these, lay it down and stitch with it, and then I'll show you a second method. So let's just get a pile right here, if you can see that. Yes, I'm looking at my screen, you can. And you can use either right or wrong side of your fabric, whatever you want it to look like. And then to get started, keep in mind here now, forgive me because I'm working in a real adverse situation. And by the way, I'm on my very old workhorse sewing machine, my Kenmore, way back in the day when machines were all made with steel parts. So I use this for everything. I don't worry about it because it's old, and besides that, I've got a wonderful service department, sewing machine repair company real close to me. So what you want to do is just overlap your fabrics and make them a little cattywampus, and then once you get started, you won't raise that needle again. And you just go ahead of yourself and put all these little snippets in place and try to get a variation. And if I have one that I like better than the other, or the edge of it, I just slip it under, and then that's how it lays on the strip. And you're just going to zigzag along. Now I have a wonderful advantage because I've been sewing for a very long time, even back in the day when calicos were practically the only thing available. Actually, they were the only thing available other than garment sewing. And calicos back in the day were the so-called original quilting fabric, way back in the day. So I should have my stiletto over here, but I don't. And my stiletto isn't anything fancy, although I'm going to buy myself a genuine one. It's just a very long needle. Sometimes I use an extremely small crochet hook, and you just want something like that to push your fabrics along. Okay, so there you see how that process is done. Now let's try adding a few pieces of string and see how that comes out. So I've never done this before, so I'm doing it right here, right now with you. And what I'm going to do is just wrap this around my hand. Now this was already in a mess, so I'm not responsible for this wadded up knot here. And let's get the little scissors. And we're just going to snip it like that. And then we're going to snip it at one end here and somewhere in the middle. So now I have all these little pieces. And let's see how we like it if we embed some of these underneath. And so you can space them out any way you want, or you can cluster them. But I love sticky outies, so I got a feeling I'm going to love this. Hold on one second. My foot pedal's getting away from me. I told you I'm working in adverse circumstances. I can see. My girlfriend loves sticky outies and curlicues, so if I make anything with that on it, boy, she's just in love right away. Now let's see what happens if we put some on the top surface. Who says we can't put some on the top? And then we could add a smidgen of lace, all kinds of things. It's endless. Everything in creativity is endless, but especially in junk journals. And God bless all the people who came up with such wonderful creative ideas. Now, have I used all my snippets already? Probably lost some in this pile here. But let's just make a few more. We'll stick them on the end. You know, nothing is a waste. Even if it doesn't come out perfect the first time, there is something you can do with it. And when I first started in this genre, I had so many mistakes that I threw away. And then later I thought, oh, why did I throw that away? I could have used it. Because a new idea comes along and you think of something new you could do with it. Now you can put these in here in piles because you can always spread them out with your finger when you put them on your page. Okay, so let's see what this one looks like. And I love it. Oh, I love the sticky outy look. Okay, so I'm not sure how my lighting's doing or my camera. This is the first time I've tried to record at my sewing machine, so please forgive me for errors. But you can see, there you have it, all your snippets sewed onto that lace. Now seam binding. So what I'll do is go to the iron and iron that, and then everything will be adhered down, and then I can snip it apart anywhere I want. Nothing is going to come loose. So that was the main idea. Now let's pretend like you don't have any seam binding, and yet you like that adhering it down process. So this is just a little strip of muslin, and let's use that. Now I'm just going to lower my foot for a minute to hold that in place, and I'll show you what I came up with. If you have or can get web fuse. Now web fuse is just a fine mesh of adhesive, and you buy it by the yard. And I like the generic one, the off-name brand one that they sell at Joann's. And I like the thin one because it comes in all different weights. So what I did, and I do for lots of my projects, is I just cut a strip, fold it up and cut, and then for a lot of my art quilt, I just snap a piece of it off. You can just pull it apart, and you can get as small a piece as you want. So this strip was something I had cut for an art quilt, and that's a little bit wide. So I just wanted to show you here how I would do this. I have this all folded up. That saves me work. Fold it over. And let's just cut a very, very narrow strip. And we're going to use that as our adhesive on this piece of muslin. So we'll get rid of that. And then just unfold this. Find your end. That was in 2 pieces. And then we're going to lay that down in the middle of our strip. So we'll just start with some snippets. Once you get your first one started, so easy. Don't forget to put them a little cattywampus too. Don't line everything up totally straight. Okay, just a little back stitch there. And then it doesn't matter if this is perfectly straight, because you can wibble wobble it back and forth and keep it in the center of your fabric. And it doesn't matter if the edge of your muslin or anything shows out there, all the more interesting. And remember, it is a junk journal, or whatever you're making. Most of the charm of creativity, I think, are the happy accidents, when things are not totally perfect. Get a red one in here. And you don't always have to go on the top, meaning laying your next piece down on the top. You can slide it under if that's easier for you. Now, what was I saying back when I said most of my fabric? Okay, I remember the point I was going to make. I've sewed from way back when calicos were about the only thing you could buy, and I have hundreds. I mean hundreds. And then after I started working on junk journals, I was kind of remorsing one day, and I thought, I do not have enough modern looking fabrics. Not in what modern, like in geometrics and that sense of the word, but I wanted something that was more timeless and didn't look so country as the stuff I had. So, I don't know, God, the universe, or somebody heard what I was thinking and saying to myself. And I got invited by one of my customers at the beauty shop to go to a fabric sale. Her aunt had passed away, and she had been an avid quilter, and her cousin just simply wanted to get rid of the fabric. And I took some friends and my sister, and we went to this lady's house. Beautiful home, beautiful basement, complete decked out studio. And I just regretted that woman didn't live long enough to enjoy her brand new studio for very long. But her cousin wanted, or yeah, my customer's cousin wanted to get rid of this fabric, so she sold it to us by the bags full. And literally, I had 5 or 6 huge tote bags full of stuff that I would never have otherwise been able to buy. And so that's how I came by lots of new modern fabrics, or let's say current fabrics. And then now I have a selection not only of the old things that I've had for a long time, which they come in quite handy, but now I have new ones as well. And then that gives me a selection of fabrics and prints and colors that are just unlimited. So let's do one more quick one here, and let's put Let me get another. You can see I'm creating such a mess. It's going to take me half hour to clean this up after I get done with this video. Get that one started. And let's see. Let's get another color sticky outie because, let's see. I saw a rust one in here. Well, here's a brick red. And this skein has already been opened, so let's cut this one. And you know what? Hold your breath because I'm going to do something I would never otherwise do. I am just going to cut this in big hunks while it's still twisted in the skein. Again, it came for free. I don't have any other use for it right now, and I have other skeins and I have other colors. So that's quick. Why not? Oh, I'm careful how I use my things. I commented on somebody's video just the other day that, oh, I know who it was. It was Natasha over at Treasure Books. And she was giving her life story, sort of, and talking about a time in her life when she didn't have supplies and how conservative she is and how she uses everything. And so I commented back and said, yes, I have plenty of supplies now, but I still have this urge to be conservative, and I have a motto. And my motto for everything that I use, I don't care what it is or what I'm doing, whether I'm making something out of wood or working in the yard, or my motto is the highest and best use of everything. So you just come by that when you've had to be conservative and you maybe didn't have everything you wanted. This one has a loop in it, which I will cut later. But let me go ahead and put this right here. Now that little piece of fabric is flipping over. We'll just tuck it back in. And get another scrap here. Another one of my mottos is, especially with fabric, especially after I started doing art quilts, fabric and lace I should say, is if it's postage stamp or bigger, you can't throw it away. Now that means I have bags and boxes and totes and bins full of tiny little scraps. And let me tell you how that comes in handy, because I do a lot of small creating on, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know. And you need an assortment of colors and textures, but you don't need anything big. So all these little tiny scraps and things that I save really come in handy, and they really make life easier, because if I had to get up every single time and go to the sewing room and find an assortment of, let's say, teal colored, I could spend 2 hours just gathering up snippets of teal. But when I've already got them all chopped up and piled in a basket, I can just sort through, and there they are. Okay, just a couple more here so we get a good idea of what this looks like. Besides that, this is just darn fun. And oh, you'll hear my cat in the background. We have a very high maintenance cat. My son rescued her from a home that was mistreating her, and we love her, but I'm telling you, she is demanding and high maintenance. So she has everything she needs today, but she'll just walk around so discontented sometimes. I told my son the other day, sometimes I feel like knocking her into tomorrow. But that's a joke. Now that's a joke. We baby her. Oh my gosh, is she spoiled. She's a beautiful cat. She's a snowshoe. And I had never seen one before. So she looks like similar to a Siamese, but I'm telling you, almost even prettier. Especially because she's a little bit thicker bodied and fluffier and thicker hair. And all right, that's enough of the sticky outies. So let's take that off and see how we're doing here. And I hope I've been on screen this whole time. Now, I know my lighting's bad. I just do not have this whole system worked out. You heard my scissors hit the floor. I'm going to be like Roxy on Roxy Creations. Rachel, I should say. Oh, she just lives life realistically and shows it all. I just enjoy her videos so much. So there you have it. A piece of muslin, a strip of this web fuse, and then when I take this to the ironing board and iron it, I'll iron it from the back side, or if I think I have any crumples, I'll iron them out on the front first and then iron it on the back side, and everything will be adhered together and I can snip it apart anywhere I want. Okay, so I think that's all I'm going to share today. Thank you for putting up with not so perfect a video, and thank you for all my YouTube subscribers, and thank you for everybody who watched my last 2 or 3 posts that I put up, especially the ones that I showed on Artie Mays and on Junk Journal Junkies. I got so many wonderful replies and comments, and I just never expected that. But thank you so much for taking the time. All right, I'll see you again soon. Keep crafting, keep creating, keep making journals if that's what you do. And please leave a comment or subscribe if this is your first time here. And also, I'm going to start asking everybody, leave me a comment as to what your creative endeavors, where your interests are, because I have no idea what people watch me for. I don't know if they watch me for junk journals or for fabric arts or for watercolor or for painting. I do a little bit of everything. So let me know what your interests are and any details that you picked up that was helpful for you. Okay, thanks a lot. Goodbye.